Okay, how's everybody doing today? We're going to go ahead and cover the topic today of what is known as primary foods. So this is kind of a unique concept, and it's something that I found a lot of truth in, is a concept called primary foods. So this is concept of Joshua Rosenthal, who was the director of the Institute of Integrative Nutrition where I went to. And there was a few principles taught at the school that really made a kind of a lasting impression on me, and really I think has the power to move health, kind of, they're needle movers, right? They can really make an impact in a short amount of time on somebody's health and wellness. And for me, probably, two of the biggest ones were, first, bioindividuality, which we'll definitely do another webinar on that, which is kind of the understanding that we're all different, right? And what works well for one person might not work well for everybody. And so we come from different genetic backgrounds, we have different genetics, different blood types, again, different exposures, different things that make us kind of unique. We're as unique on the inside as we are on the outside. Our spirits are different and unique, and wants, desires, dreams are all different. Like we're different people, right? And what works well for one person doesn't work well for everybody. And so we get into these kind of camps that where someone might do a certain particular diet or eat a certain way, and then they think that's the way everybody should eat, right? You get people with food that almost get as passionate about their food as they do a religion, right? Like vegans, paleo, keto, everybody's kind of in a different camp, and everybody thinks they've got the right stuff that works for everybody, right? And a lot of times it just works well for you. And so again, our hope as we go through this diet, as we go through this protocol, is this is a great protocol for losing weight. It's a great protocol for shedding some unwanted pounds, those kind of things. But everybody that goes through this is different. And my job as a coach is to help each of you find kind of what's your sweet spot, right? What works well for you, what doesn't. The cool thing about this diet is it's a big elimination diet. We're going to take 95% of the problems, and we're going to avoid those for the next 9 weeks. And then it's going to make it a little easier to kind of dial things in on an individual basis for each one of us coming out of this diet. And so this is one of those concepts that right from the beginning is important to kind of understand, grasp, and wrap your head around, is that you are unique, you are different than everybody else. And even though the protocol's very similar, it's for a specific result, right? This is not a sustained lifestyle protocol. There's things in here that you should take and implement. Each one of you, that's going to be a different recipe, different scenario. And so that's part of this bio-individuality, right? Is that we are all different, unique snowflakes, right? So, and it's good to understand that. It's good to recognize I am a unique snowflake, and I need to figure out what works well for me and what does not. So, even though, we use ketosis, because that's how you break down body fat. That's how you get in that. We are not on a ketogenic diet, right? We are not on a typical ketogenic diet, what people would call that. Even though we're eating similar to paleo, we're eating similar to veganism in some aspects. And again, you get these philosophies where people will kind of just plant their flag in the dirt and say, I'm this, and everyone else should be this in order to have the best health. And I think you can take the best things from every thing and see what works well for you. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to accomplish on this protocol. And so primary foods is, sorry to get off the tangent there. Primary foods is the other big one, I think. So first, bioindividuality. We're all different snowflakes. Second is primary foods. There's things that feed us beyond nutrition, right? There's things that bring life, bring energy, bring balance into our lives that we do not consume through our mouth, right? And these are things like career, things like spirituality, things like our relationships, right? Things like physical activity. Those are kind of the four big ones. A lot of the other things kind of go within that. But again, spirituality, career, relationships, physical activity. And so at the school they taught these are the primary foods, right? These are what feed us on kind of a primal, basic level, right? Food is secondary, right? So you have things that feed your spirit, feed your soul, and then you have things that feed your body, right? And so in life, we need to make sure we're focused as much on our primary foods as we are on those secondary foods, right? Secondary foods are the broccoli, the kale, the spinach, the grass-fed beef, the coconut oil, the things we consume. Those are secondary foods, right? So today, just want to kind of go through a little bit more about this concept of primary foods, why they're so important, some of the new science that's coming out about primary foods, things that are called like epigenetics, and how they can have like a bigger impact on our health than just eating the right foods, right? Because ultimately, you can drink all the kale smoothies you want, but if your relationships are poor, or your physical activity is bad, or you're in a life-sucking job, like your health's not going to be good. And so part of what we need to go through as we look at this diet, right? Like diets always gets kind of a bad rap, right? Bad news or bad concept is when we diet from things, we're kind of eliminating certain things, right? And so like with this protocol we're on, we're going to eliminate 95% of the bad things, the processed foods, the sugars, the easily digested carbohydrates, those kind of things. We're going to eliminate a lot of those problem areas, right? And we're going to increase good, healthy, natural foods. We're going to increase our supplementation. We're going to increase our ketone consumption. We're going to increase, fish oil, MCT oil. We're going to go after some really good things and bring them into our body, right? So we're going to eliminate the bad, bring in the good. And the same concept, sometimes we need to go on a social media diet, or where we, again, eliminate the bad and we go after the good stuff and bring more of that in. And relationships, right? Sometimes we need a diet from that. We need to eliminate some of the bad ones and focus more on the good ones and bring those in. So part of going through this protocol or this diet is I kind of want you to look at that same thing with our primary foods, right? There's things where we need to go out and get more of, and then there's things that we need to kind of move on from, right? Eliminate those things out of our life, just like we're eliminating the junk food, the processed food that's causing us problems. We need to eliminate, those things in our life that are holding us back, that are not helping us to be the best that we can be, and not helping us to optimize our overall health. Now, again, this is kind of that holistic portion of being healthy, right? Is we're not just going to look at the nutrition. We're going to look at these primary foods and kind of focus on them. So part of the new science that's come out about primary foods is a concept called epigenetics. And it's kind of a pretty cool, groundbreaking science on how our environment and the things that we are exposed to have an impact on our genes. So each of us are born with a certain genetic code. And within this genetic code, we have genes that, you know, have us green eyes, blue eyes, brown eyes. You know, some of us have sweet hair, some of us don't, right? These are made up from our genetic makeup, right? Some of us get gray hair in our 40s. And so there's our genetic factors, but then there's what they're calling epigenetic factors, which means even though you have these genes, so you may also have genes for things such as type 1 or type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, dementia, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, thyroid issues. You know, you've got these genetic predispositions, right? You have those genes in your genetic makeup. But what they've discovered is that our environment can cause our genes to express themselves, or they can turn on or turn off, just like a light switch. So you might have a gene for cancer, and if you go out and expose yourself to certain environmental factors, they can turn that switch on. If you have that cancer gene and you don't expose yourself to those things, that gene can remain shut off. Okay, it doesn't have to express itself. And so this is what's called epigenetics. And so they find that these conditions can have a big effect on our health, right? Because it can kind of program our genetic code, like what switches are on, what switches are off. So these primary foods, they have a big impact on gene expression, right? And in addition to these, some of the epigenetic factors are like sleep, right? Sleep is a huge one. If you're not getting good sleep, not recovering, not resting, like you can have bad gene expression just because you're not sleeping good. Nutrition, you're not eating the right things, you're eating crap, you're exposing yourself to toxins, right? That's another one that it can turn on these bad genes, and you can really suffer from those consequences. So again, these primary foods help control stress, which has a huge impact on these epigenetic factors, these switches turning on and off. Stress is the biggest cause of disease. Stress is the biggest. If you look at the word disease, it's dis-ease, right? So there's stress on the system somewhere. There is dis-ease. And stress causes all of these things to turn on these bad genetic expressions. So I want you to focus as much on these primary foods as we do on the secondary foods throughout this protocol. And so one of the cool experiments they did to kind of recognize these gene expression was a scientist named Bruce Lipton. And Bruce has done some really great things he's got some great videos out there on thoughts and on energy and just, you can Google him on YouTube, but he's got some just amazing videos. But one thing he did is he took some stem cells and replicated them and found that, you know, stem cells replicated into identical cells and that. And so what he did was he took these identical stem cells and he put them into 3 different environments, right? 3 different petri dishes with different chemicals to see what would happen to these stem cells. And the interesting thing he found out was that they change based on the environment, right? So the first group turned into muscle cells, and the second group turned into bone cells, and the third group turned into fat cells. They were all identical stem cells, but what made the difference was the environment, the chemical makeup made that cell change. And so it wasn't necessarily the genetic program of the cell, it was the environment that made that cell express itself differently. And so we are our own petri dish, right? Like our body's full of chemicals, chemical reactions from hormones, from all these toxins, all these other things. And they play a major part in our environment, our cellular environment, on how our genes express themselves, what kind of cells we're creating, what kind of, are we creating muscle tissue? Are we creating fat cells? Are we repairing bone health? Are we creating disease? Those kind of things. And so I thought that experiment was pretty cool. And so as we look at these primary foods, we need to recognize the impact they have on our health, right? Because they have a tremendous impact on our body's chemistry. Stress has a huge impact on your body's chemistry. When you're releasing stress hormones, like it causes a lot of problems. I had a client yesterday talk to me about, well, his weight loss was slowing down a little bit, and we asked him about his stress levels, and he's like, yeah, I got changes going on at work. I'm really stressed out. And it's like, well, that's probably why the weight's not coming off. And part of that is like your body doesn't know the difference of stress at work or stress that comes from looking at your phone or your emails or, than it did being chased by a tiger, 500 years ago. The body's stress response is the same, right? You go to work or you get stressed out driving to work in bad traffic. Like the stress response is the same as if you had a tiger chasing you or a bear chasing you. Your body releases those same chemicals. And so it's in this state of fight or flight all the time. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. Like I can't take it anymore. And these stresses are sending signals to your body all the time. You're in this fight or flight mode, right? So you got to work on, getting away from that sympathetic nervous system response into more of a parasympathetic. And we'll talk more about that. I don't want to get off track, but I just want you to recognize what stress does to your body, right? It stresses you out. And again, on a primal level, you don't know the difference between, stress at work or stress with your relationships as, getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger thousands of years ago. Like that's the same stress your body goes on, the same signals. We don't have those factors. We're pretty rare you'll go to the grocery store and get chased by a bag of wolves or something, but maybe not so much here in Haley, but driving to work in traffic in Boise or Salt Lake, it can be crazy, right? So your stress levels just go off the charts, and we're like doing that all the time to ourselves. We live in a day and age where it's just like, you go from one stressful environment to the next stressful environment to the next one, and your body's constantly in this, fight or flight mode all the time. And so really recognize when those triggers are coming, right? So this little practice here, this circle of life, I think is a great way to kind of identify areas in your life where you're kind of out of balance, right? Where your primary foods are not being met. And so this is a great thing to do, like every, like at the beginning of the diet, at the end of the diet, and then again, every 6 weeks or 2 months, like as you can work on these things. So what you do with this is you just print one of these off, and I'll make these available for you guys. And then you put a little dot on the line, like career. You kind of rate yourself, like, am I happy with my career? If not, you put it, dot lower down on the line. If you're happy, it's higher up. Education, where's my health, my physical activity, home cooking, home environment, relationships, my social life, joy, spirituality, creativity, finances, And you put these dots on these, and then you kind of connect the dots. And so your chart might look something like this down here. And, like in this one, in this area, this client would need to work on, well, maybe a little bit of creativity here. career? You know, what can you do in your career to enjoy it more? Is it a change of career? Is it just something that you can focus on to kind of, again, get that closer to the outside edge? That's what we want to work on, right? And so it kind of gives you a way of evaluating, you know, where am I at compared to where I want to be in all these areas of my life, right? Where can I work on these primary foods, and where can I improve? And then do this again every couple of months to see, you know, evaluate where you're at. Whether it's once a quarter is probably a really good way of doing it, every 3 months, until you get to where you're in a good spot, right? And again, I just want to stress with you, like, how important these primary foods are, right, when you're talking about your health. So if you're doing all the things nutritionally right, but your relationships are struggling and you're not finding happiness there, like, your health's still going to suffer. And so I just want you to, you know, think of other areas in your life, again, where we can eliminate some of the bad, bring in more some of the good, and improve, just like we're doing with the diet, right? And just because you can't see the damage that comes from poor nutrition with your primary foods, it's there. And we all have some level of health and vitality in these areas of primary foods. So it's important to kind of recognize, like, oh yeah, I'm a little out of shape in this area or that area where I need to focus on. So again, if you have any questions on primary foods, or any comments, I'd love to get your comments on those. But it's important to, again, just focus on what you can do to improve, and identify those areas using something like this circle of life. If you need a copy, email me, text me. I will shoot one over for you to utilize and use, and to do this practice with. And again, it's a great concept. I really, really love the concept of primary foods. And I just hope that, again, as we go through this process, we can look at where we can improve that, just like our nutrition. So again, if you've got any questions, reach out to me, text me, message me, email me, say what's up. Look forward to hearing from you guys. Love you guys, and hope everybody's doing well. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.